Announce to the world that you will take any drug test at any time from anyone. And that if they lose, they owe you $1 million. Coach Greg, in today's video, it's all about being a fake natty. More specifically, it's the top tips on how to fake being a fake natty. Or basically, how to be Jeff Nip, Mike, you're in my head, you're living in my head. You are living in my head. Mike O'Hearn. Tip number 1, post videos of yourself lifting incredibly heavy weights, especially in the deadlift, but never actually compete in a powerlifting meet. Like David Lade or Lex Little. Now, if you actually enter a powerlifting meet, you might get drug tested, you don't want that. So you just want to pretend like you could win the contest, but never actually compete. Tip number 2, tell people you would never do PEDs because you have a wife, girlfriend, family, and so on. Like Matt does fitness. You would never ever use any PEDs because he has a family and caring loved ones. Not like anyone else in the world has no reason to have everyone find out. If you have a family, like if you're married, it automatically means that you're natural. Because you have kids, you wouldn't risk your health because you have kids. So everyone will automatically believe you're natty. Tip number 3, if you take too much gear and the gains are becoming suspiciously too impressive, go off cycle immediately and claim you got injured. Oliver Forsland, he didn't do that. He would never have done that. He would never have faked an injury or went off cycle. He would not do that because he's natty. Okay, so remember that. Tip number 4, and this is an important one, always deny using steroids. Somebody says, hey, do you do drugs? I do not take steroids. I take SARMs and other PEDs. Never admit to steroids. Because you can say, I don't do steroids.
So, Jack, the question is, did you take steroids?
No, I did not take steroids.
You can take SARMs, MK677, GW, 501516, clenbuterol T3, SR9009.
20 minutes later.
Growth hormone, MK6500. BPC 11295.
2 minutes later.
GHRP6, GHRP Sermorelin, Ipamorelin, Site Enhancement Oil, Hyaluronic Acid, Hexarelin.
3 minutes later.
Marijuana, amphetamines, methamphetamines, Adderall, other recreational drugs, and so on. It's getting dark outside. There's so many other things. Just always deny steroids. Tip number 5, convince your doctor to prescribe you steroids, HRT, and then tell everyone, hey, I'm still natural because it's bioidentical hormones and I'm only in the top range of normal. 0.1% of the world, they have the same high test levels as me. So I'm natty. Nobody would ever do that, would they? No one does that. No one would do that. Take small doses year-round. Don't cycle on and off. Take small doses year-round. That way you can make slow and steady gains throughout the year. If you make gains too much at once, like when Jack got jacked and he put on 13 pounds in a month, it's kind of suspicious. But if you take really small doses and spread out those 13 pounds of muscle over 13 months, hey, you're gonna look natural. You say, hey, I just slow and steady gains. Never bulk and cut. Too suspicious. You're gonna gain a lot of weight. People say, oh, you're on them PEDs. Look at how big you got. Never cut and bulk. Main gain. That way you're just slowly gaining muscle over a long period of time. Like Mike Thurston, he's clearly natural because he makes continuous awesome gains. Slow and steady, realistic. Just like those few pounds of muscle here and there. He doesn't get fat and then get ripped. He just stays mind-blowing shredded year after year, making progress for 10 plus straight years. It's amazing how much muscle you can put on when you're a natty when you gain slowly over years. Right, Mike Thurston? Stay lean, but not shredded. Lean, but not shredded. Single-digit body fat, that's cool. But if you get to 5%, it's just too much. We're on to you, okay? When you look so lean and you have so many chest striations and the bicep veins are popping everywhere, we just don't believe you're natural. So you want to stay ripped, but not shredded. Just so lean that nobody else can maintain it. But you can just say, hey, I'm not as lean as those bodybuilders, so I'm natural. If I was on PEDs, I'd look like Mr. Olympia Jay Cutler. You could say, hey, if I was in fact on steroids, I would be ripped. I'm only 7% body fat. If I was on PEDs, I'd be at 3 or 4%. So like Jeff Cavalier's 5.8%, I think he had posted in one of his videos, you know, that's pretty lean for a natty.
It comes in at 5.8%. I stayed pretty much 5.8% pretty much all year round.
If he were to stay at 9%, he'd be able to be like, hey, I'm natural, look at me, I'm 9%. Not like I'm 5% year round making gains in my 40s. He is in fact natural, of course we all know that, but it would be that much more believable if Jeff were say 9 or 10%. See what I'm saying? Always tell people you eat chicken, broccoli, and rice in most of your meals. If you do that, people automatically assume that the gains you made were from the food you're eating. Always tell people you eat every 2 to 3 hours, because if you say that, people are, oh yeah, you're making all those gains because you're eating so frequently. If you fast, you could never gain muscle. If you only eat 3 or 4 meals a day, you can't build muscle like that. Dead giveaway, okay? So anyone who doesn't eat, I don't know, at least 7 times a day, they're probably not natural. Go for 50% of the results that you could get. Then say, hey, I'm natural. If I was on them PEDs, I'd be a pro bodybuilder for sure. This is what I can achieve natural. Because if you go for the full 100% progress, gonna be too obvious that you might not be natty. If you just accept 50% of the gains for PEDs, you could probably get away with telling people that you're natty. They'd be like, yeah, maybe he is, maybe. It's really an actual good tip. You're gonna think I'm being sarcastic. I'm not being sarcastic. Always credit a really good photo on the lighting. Hey, it's the lighting, guys. I don't actually look this good. It's the lighting. If that doesn't work, credit the camera angles. It's the angles. I don't actually have a small waist. I don't actually have any definition or muscle mass. The combination of the half natty lighting with the proper angles is why I look better than everyone in the world. Always tell people that your gains have been slow and steady. Oh, I gained 15 pounds of muscle this year. Yeah, it was just really slow and steady gains and hard work, you know. But you gained 15 pounds of muscle this year. Yeah, it's really slow and steady. I hardly even gain 1 pound a month. It's really slow. It's consistent, slow, and steady gains. So you put on 40 pounds of muscle in the last 3 years. Yes, I know it's really slow gains, but I hung in there very slow and steady gains. So slow and steady, consistency is what it's all about. Don't expect it to happen overnight. This is a marathon and not a sprint. You ever heard that one 5,000 times? Oh, I gained 50 pounds of muscle in 3 years. Oh, it's slow and steady gains. It's a marathon, not a sprint. I just gained 1 pound a month for the last 15 years straight. Next, use orals and use SARMs. See, if you're on SARMs, their girlfriend, boyfriend circle, they're not gonna know what that is. Oh, they're just vitamins. It's supplements, because it's in a bottle. But if you find a needle, you're screwed. If you got the needle, oh, that's bad. Trust me. Trust me. If people find that you have a needle and you're injecting, I just thought you were on steroids. You're injecting steroids? Oh my God, that's so much worse. Meanwhile, you could be on 150 milligrams of D-ball a day, and it's just in the bottle, it's just a pill. Meanwhile, she might be taking 100 milligrams of Anavar a day. Oh, that's nothing, it's just that Anavar, that's not the bikini drug. You're injecting 10 milligrams of testosterone a week? Yeah, I'm on HRT. I'm on replacement testosterone. I'm a woman that's prescribed by my doctor. You're on steroids. Well, aren't you taking 50 milligrams of Anavar a day to prep for your bikini show? Yeah, but that's just Anavar. You're injecting testosterone. Well, you're on way more drugs than me. Yeah, but you're injecting. See what I mean? And also, if you have a needle and you have a hole and it's poked and they see a bloody little poke hole, hard to say you're natty if they find the poke hole. So if you are injecting, do the poke hole where people don't see it. Probably want to stay away from injecting in the delts. Probably want to do in the upper right quadrant of the glutes so that no one actually sees it down there. Except for maybe your partner from behind if you're into that type of thing, which you may or may not be. No judgment. Always look like you could walk into a show and win if you dieted for maybe 2 or 3 weeks, but never actually diet those extra 2 or 3 weeks and compete. It's better to leave people saying, hey, you could win a show, you could. If you actually go and compete and do win, be like, no way, you're natural, you can't win a show natural. So look like you could win if you push through a final 2 or 3 weeks, but don't actually go through with it. If you do compete, never compete in a drug-tested competition and just say, hey, there was no drug-tested competition. I just did this show because that's the only show. I wanted to test myself against the best. Definitely say that. If you're a fake natty and you're competing, do not enter a drug-tested competition because that's cheating. Enter a non-tested competition and say, I wanted to compete against the best. I want to see how I stacked up against those people on PEDs. Just say, I wanted to prove that I could beat everybody on PEDs without the PEDs. Like if a marathon runner wanted to enter a bicycle race, they wouldn't use a bicycle. They would just run against the bike rider to prove that I don't need that machine to race. I'm just going to run the Tour de France and win because I'm going to prove you don't need PEDs to come out on top. I'm going to prove I don't need that machine, that bicycle to win that bike race. I'm going to do it on my own. With my legs running. That's the same as competing natural. Announce to the world that you will take any drug test at any time from anyone. And that if they lose, they owe you $1 million. And make sure that it's during the time of the cold when no one can travel. And if they do in fact call you out on it, make sure you're taking something that they can't detect on the drug test. You know how many drug tests don't even test for SARMs? Take SARMs, you pass the drug test in that federation. Do that drug test. And make sure you're taking a slow-acting substance that you can easily stop so by the time the person flies out, it's out of your system. So, for example, you're taking test suspension, take it for 51 weeks straight, stop for a week, get drug tested, and show the results saying, hey, look, I'm natural. Because you only took steroids for 51 out of 52 weeks. And you can easily, that's right, easily pass the test. You're natural because you took a drug test and you passed. It shows that you didn't take drugs for a few days. Congratulations. And the last tip, always post on social media or I see the dog in the back and it keeps ruining my mental flow. You're in my head. You're living in my head. You are living in my head. He's living rent-free in my head the way Chris Bumstead is in Breon's head. Don't forget to post on social media that you are in fact natural, or better yet, make a video saying you're natural. Because after all, everything you see or read on the internet is of course 100% true. GregDoucette.com for coaching. Greg Doucette, IBU Pro. Bloop it up. 2 freaking ridiculously good videos. These 2 you better freaking watch or shame on you. And until next time, I am out. You're in my head. You're living in my head. You are living in my head.